Sup, chooms? Good to see you all. So today I am not going to go over hair loss specifically. Rather, I am going to talk about me personally. The reason why is because as my channel has grown, I've noticed that more and more often the focus of my videos has become less about my message and more of a referendum on me personally and on my conduct in the past. So, it pains me to have to address any of this because I know many of my viewers are still in the dark about this, and I really wish I could keep it that way for everybody, because ultimately, despite this channel bearing my name and my likeness, this channel isn't really about me. When I created this channel, I never did so with the intention of it becoming a major source of hair loss information that would just grow to the level of popularity that it has. And, I initially just created it to share lifting videos with my friends in real life. Oftentimes I would discuss the subject of hair loss with my friends and co-workers in real life, and eventually one of them mentioned that since I like talking about hair loss so much and doing research on it, maybe I should start talking about it on my channel. I decided that was a good idea, and here we are today. However, one thing I have come to learn the hard way is that it isn't easy to separate the message from the messenger. To give you an example of this, many of you guys already know that I am a vegan. However, I will be the first to confess that vegan activism is woefully ineffective, because even though the arguments in favor of veganism are very strong, especially the ones that center around the subject of ethics, the activism is nevertheless ineffective because the character of most vegans is so appalling and cringeworthy that nobody will ever listen to them, no matter how many facts they bring to the table. You can make whatever case you want for veganism, but nobody is going to listen to you if nobody likes you. Oftentimes, this applies conversely as well. You see many faces on YouTube and in social media who have a terrible message, but they're likable or they're pretty enough that people will still listen to them even if their points are bereft of any kind of logic or evidence. Oftentimes, people can be charming enough and know how to appeal well enough to people's confirmation biases that they'll generate a very loyal fan base even if their claims are dishonest and not backed by any evidence-based research. The underlying point to all this, though, is that for someone to be able to effectively get their point across on whatever issue they're advocating for or against, the quality of their message will be judged by both the message itself, but also by their own character. In terms of my message, I regret almost nothing. I am proud of the research I have put onto my content on this channel, and I take pride knowing that my message, despite occasionally being incendiary, has nevertheless inspired many people to save their hair by both sharing my own experience as a hair loss veteran and also by helping explain the research on existing hair loss treatments so that people can make a more informed decision and not be misled by the demagogues on either side. Like I said earlier though, facts and logic are not enough in this digitized age. People will not listen to anything, no matter how well it is presented, if they do not trust or like the character of the messenger, and this is where I have sadly failed tremendously. So, I have had the pleasure of being introduced to many new people through my YouTube channel, and many people's introduction to me has been through this channel, and I have very much enjoyed interacting with everybody. But the truth is that my digital footprint long predates my activity on this YouTube channel, and my activities prior to my YouTube presence were, well, let's just say they weren't exactly very wholesome, and I have come to find out the hard way that what you write online in the past is basically a digital tattoo. It doesn't matter how much you regret it or how much you've changed since it has happened, people will remember it and use it against you, and as such, it won't matter what your other merits may be, people will judge you for any kind of sordid behavior you engaged in the past, regardless of whether or not it was done in earnest or done out of satire. So, as you guys know, my channel doesn't address benign, non-contentious subjects like home improvement or reviewing office supplies. Hair loss is a very emotionally driven subject, and the fact that I have taken a very firm stance in favor of finasteride has made it inevitable that some people are not going to like what I have to say. Fortunately for my detractors though, the person who has made so many pro-finasteride videos is me. And like I said, I don't have a clean reputation online. That is extremely fortunate for them though, because if someone had made the videos I made, but didn't have the same sordid online posting history that I do, then the critics would have no choice but to actually go after the merits of the argument. Since it is me though, they're relieved of that responsibility, and they could just bring up my past posting history to effectively change the subject and make anything I talk about a referendum on me personally rather than on the actual message they take contention with. So I know finasteride is a very controversial subject. Even I used to be terrified of finasteride, and I even spoke out against it at some time. I know right from the beginning that by making videos on my channel that speak out against the rampant and out-of-control fear-mongering online about finasteride, that I was going to create many enemies, and that those enemies would do whatever they could to try to destroy me since they know they couldn't counter my message. However, as it turns out, even many people in the hair loss community despise me, and it is largely because of the high standards I put on the scientific research for hair loss treatments, which has put a damper on their overt enthusiasm for potential hair loss remedies outside of the basic conventional treatments like finasteride minoxidil. Case in point were my videos on oral minoxidil and procyanidin B2. Both of these have been hyped up tremendously by hair loss forums and on Reddit, and when I gave my honest opinions about them, it caused a meltdown which quickly turned into personal attacks against me based on my online presence prior to my YouTube channel. So, since it seems there is no way to separate myself from my content, it seems I am left with no other choice but to address this dirt personally. At this point, it is already out in the wild, and I'd rather address it now rather than having to address it later when maybe I have 50 or 100,000 subscribers. So, where do I even begin with all this crap? Well, a lot of guys who see me and see the way I present research, they get the impression that I am someone who has their shit together, and that is true for the most part. I have a good career, I make good investments, I am fiscally responsible, and I abstain from degenerate vices like drugs, alcohol, and pornography. I live a very prosperous life, and I enjoy many hobbies such as video games, reading, electric cars, and motorcycles, and I enjoy physical fitness and clean living. However, it wasn't always this way. I used to have some very serious and very embarrassing problems, many of which I've disclosed online and now are being used to attack me. One of the most prominent examples is my prior issues with substance abuse. I won't specify what I abuse because chances are people already know, but in the past I have had issues with abusing certain mental stimulants, which in turn led to many other problems such as difficulty maintaining employment, anxiety, poverty, and risky sexual behavior. Throughout my 20s and into my early 30s, I was living an absolutely squalid existence. As many of you guys know, hair loss was a very big problem in my life at the time, especially since every time I was on finasteride, I would read some horror story online and convince myself that whatever negative effect I was feeling was directly because of finasteride, and that was especially convenient for me because it also served as a justification for me to continue my abuse of other recreational drugs, since I could just tell myself that it was the finasteride I was using and not the dangerous mental stimulants that would make me crash. Back then, I only had a 4-year bachelor's degree in kinesiology and I still am a CSCS through the NSCA, that's a Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. And as I found out the hard way, there wasn't much in the way of career opportunities other than just being a personal trainer. I was working exceptionally long hours at the time, sometimes as many as 60 hours per week, yet I was only bringing home very meager payments, about $30,000 per year, and most of that stuff was going to fuel my drug and sex addiction, sadly. I couldn't really make any investments. I couldn't move out of my shitty studio apartment where I had nothing but a dirty mattress on the floor, and all of this led to a lot of self-resentment and pent-up rage. So, how did I cope with all this self-loathing and regret? Well, I would go online and I decided I would be as much of an asshole as I possibly could be and say the most repugnant, controversial shit I could ever imagine just for the sake of stirring up a ruckus. To me, it didn't matter at all whether or not the things I was saying were things that were true or if they were false or whether or not I agreed with them. Just the notion that I could go online and say things that would cause entire forums to take notice of me and create so much drama was very empowering for me. It gave me a rush that became addictive in itself, and soon enough I found myself in a place of internet trolling culture, and I would register on various forums for no other purpose than to cause drama and misery by posting things designed to trigger and inflame as many people as possible, and in doing so I would post incendiary content everywhere. I would just do it to see what the fallout from the users would be. Really, the only prerequisite was that what I was posting was offensive and controversial. It didn't matter whether or not deep down I agreed with it, because as far as I was concerned, I was just LARPing, and I never could have imagined I would generate enough of a presence online that this garbage I was posting back then would come back to haunt me the way it has now. And it was also around this time that I became heavily involved with the internet trolling cultures of things like Gamergate, as well as websites like 4chan, as well as Encyclopedia Dramatica. And as fucked up as it is, I actually felt a sense of community being surrounded by some of the worst psychopaths ever seen on the internet. I told myself that deep down, none of what these guys are saying is true, and that they're just trying to be edgy and funny, and that they find humor in pissing off other people, even if it comes at their own expense. And I was very much the same way. And for a time, being in these online communities was almost cathartic to me. At the time, I was going through various job training and internships where I was forced to be as artificially kind and professional, and I fucking despised it. When I got home, I would go straight to the internet, and I felt I could just unleash the beast. And the fact that I was able to post things that would instantly get me fired if I were to ever say them in my professional life made me feel invincible. It was like this risk-reward type situation, and I loved it at the time. And the fact that I ever got involved in internet trolling culture or said any of these horrible things was obviously a big mistake, but a much bigger mistake I made was thinking that there was any chivalry amongst fellow trolls, because as it turns out, there isn't any chivalry. So eventually, when you are posting things for the explicit purpose to be as offensive as possible and just piss people off as trolls usually do, you're not going to just piss off regular people who aren't trolls, you're going to eventually piss off other trolls, and that is what led to my eventual downfall. You see, around 2014, I started talking about finasteride and hair loss on my fledgling YouTube channel, and eventually my advocacy of finasteride, in addition to revealing who I am publicly online, led to bald people deciding that I had gone too far and it was time to destroy me. So what happened is that all of the offensive stuff I had ever posted in Facebook groups, as well as other forums intended for trolling, had been collected as a giant bibliography, and then was all exposed online on the trolling wiki Encyclopedia Dramatica, which made me look like the biggest psychopathic creep to ever dwell on the internet that you could ever imagine. And the funny thing about all this, though, is that even though this exposure apparently happened in 2015, I had not even become aware of it until last year, when it was brought to my attention by one of my viewers. And as you guys could probably imagine, I was pretty upset about this, and you may think I deserve it all because, after all, a lot of the shit written there is stuff I did right. But I guess what really upset me about it is that everything presented on that page was presented as if I had said it in earnest, and it was all real rather than just me being a trolling douchebag, which is exactly what I was doing. Encyclopedia Dramatica, they bill themselves as a satirical wiki, so I figured at the time that what I wrote on their Facebook page would be interpreted as satire, but they presented it as if everything I said was 100% serious, which of course it wasn't. I, like everybody else, was just trying to be funny and offensive, and nothing I posted there was any worse than what everyone else was already saying and doing. In fact, you can argue what I wrote was relatively tame, as we're talking about a website that makes fun of school shootings after all. So, despite my misgivings with this article, it may surprise you guys to know that even today, after everything I've been through, I don't have anything against Encyclopedia Dramatica. Their article on the Twilight series is legitimately probably the funniest thing I've ever read. I know what they post is offensive, but I am smart enough to distinguish between what is posted in satire and what is posted in earnest. Nevertheless, I had two major problems with the article. The first I already mentioned, being that what I wrote was presented in a false light, meaning they presented it as if I was being serious rather than just being satirical and offensive. And another problem was the fact that they also attributed some forum posts from ebombsworld.com to me. I do not know the source of the ebombsworld posts, but I guess in their attempt to find as much dirt on me as they possibly could, they Googled usernames I've used in the past, and they found one username on ebombsworld.com which is similar to one I've used in the past, and it looks like the post was just a joke thread about people sharing their experiences being caught not masturbating or something. So it is pretty benign, but nevertheless, I don't like being told I wrote things that I didn't really write, especially since one of the posts attributed to me was a guy claiming he had sex with his 15-year-old cousin when he was 21, which is preposterous. I have a female cousin who is 1 year younger than me, and I've only seen her twice in my entire life, both times when we were children, because she lives in France. So obviously I take issue with people claiming I raped an underage girl and committed incest. That's no joke. That's horrible to say. Don't fucking accuse me of that. In spite of all this, what I decided to do was write the admin of Encyclopedia Dramatica at the time and explain to him the situation, and I asked him politely to take the article down. He ignored me, so next I contacted a lawyer, and the lawyer said there wasn't really much I can do other than sue the person who wrote it, which I would do gladly if I knew who did it, but I don't, unfortunately. So what my lawyer told me is that I could try to sue the admin, but it would be very hard because there is this legal provision called Section 230, which protects publishers of user-submitted content. So I asked what my options were, and he said I could subpoena the website and find the person who wrote it and sue him. However, I was skeptical of this idea being effective, since for all I know, whoever created it may not even live in the USA, which would make it impossible for me to sue him. He also said I could file a DMCA and maybe copyright the images on the article and then send a cease and desist to the admin of the website. So I decided to go for this latter option and just hope for the best. So not only did the admin at the time ignore the DMCA, he decided it would be funny to edit the article himself by making his own defamatory claims, as well as put the article on the front page where he called me a pedophile. No doubt he thought he was being really funny and edgy by doing this, but what he didn't realize is that by doing this, he completely fucked himself over. Like I said earlier, Section 230 does protect publishers from being sued for defamation for content that other users submit, but by editing the article about me himself, he was now responsible for its content, meaning I could now sue him for defamation, which is exactly what I decided to do. So, my first goal was to track this guy down to sue him, which you'd think would be difficult, but fortunately for me, this idiot decided to register Encyclopedia Dramatica as an LLC in the state of Nevada, which is basically the equivalent of painting a giant sue me target on your back. So what I did was I hired the best lawyer I could possibly find in the state of Nevada, and I filed a defamation lawsuit against the LLC in the state of Nevada, which allowed me to find the individual himself, who was located in another state, but I was eventually able to serve him the lawsuit. So I can't go into detail about the happenings of the lawsuit due to the settlement, nor can I say the name of the person I sued specifically, but ultimately the article in question was taken down, and the admin of the website, in a desperate attempt to fund a defense against my lawsuit, attempted to sell Encyclopedia Dramatica to someone he knew on the darknet, and somehow this plan was discovered by moderators on Encyclopedia Dramatica, who subsequently ousted him in a now famous coup, which has not only led him to losing power over Encyclopedia Dramatica, but now he has his own article up on Encyclopedia Dramatica, which exposes a very embarrassing story from an ex-girlfriend. So that, combined with the fact that legal fees have left him $20,000 in debt, makes me feel that at least a sense of justice was served, and I am satisfied with the outcome of the lawsuit, even though the damage towards me has already been done. So I should mention, this actually isn't the first time I have brought up this subject on my channel. I actually discussed this video and all this stuff in a video before, but I took it down as instructed by my lawyer because at the time I uploaded the video, the case was still ongoing. But now that it's all over, though, I am glad to share my side of the story. However, even though the outcome of this lawsuit ultimately did end favorably for me, I nevertheless feel that my posting history does not really make it very viable for me to continue to have much of an online presence these days. The fact that I have brought further attention to it through this video, in fact, probably amplifies this, and it may not seem like it, but I have gone through absolute hell to get my life back in order compared to where it was just like 8, 9, 10 years ago, and as much as it pains me to have to give up what I love doing on this channel, I cannot risk jeopardizing my life and all the progress I have made further through an online presence. I, of course, take full responsibility for all the stupid shit I have said and done in the past, and I am legitimately very sorry for all the pain I have caused others through my reckless behavior, but I don't think my entire life deserves to be destroyed because of mistakes I made in the past. I really worry that if I keep building a presence online, that eventually the things that have caused so much pain for me online will eventually creep into my life and affect me personally in many different ways that could jeopardize my career. But more importantly, I worry about it putting people who know me, such as family members and friends. I worry that it will put their lives at risk as well. So I got to tell you guys, no matter how this turns out, I am very proud of the work I have done on my channel, and I feel educating and fighting back against the misinformation that exists out there online is vitally important, but sadly, may not be the type of person to do it. No matter what I post, no matter what I talk about, it will always become a referendum on my character, and that does a disservice to the message I'm trying to promote, as it shouldn't be tainted just because it comes from me. So honestly, I don't know where I'm going to take my channel, or even if I'm going to continue this at all. I have lots more research I want to cover and share with you all, because when I see my audience, what I really see is a population of people who are younger than me, and I like to imagine that I can be that person, that one guy I wish existed when I was a young man, who could have opened my eyes and helped expose all the bullshit I used to believe about hair loss, because that bullshit is still very prevalent today, and I think it is costing many people their hair and their confidence, and I'd love to keep fighting back against that. However, if it is not possible to separate my character from my message, then I am not doing anyone any favors by continuing. In fact, I may end up hurting the ideas I am spreading even more just because they are coming from me. So I have to contemplate whether or not continuing to do this is worth the risk. So I'm not saying this is my last video. I do have a couple more subjects I want to cover this coming week, but I'm going to have to see how this all continues to develop and decide for myself whether or not creating these videos is worth risking my entire professional and personal life over. So I will see you guys again soon. Until then, take care.